Okay.
All right. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you. Well, Jen asked me to speak to you guys. I've had a lot of experience working with homeless, underprivileged people, people who criminal background. I was a probation officer for felony offenders, adult felony offenders. I was a mental health volunteer at a mental health place. I was a counselor on suicide prevention, and ultimately I was co-manager of a homeless shelter for women. So I've had a lot of different experiences throughout my life, and Jen asked me to talk to you guys about how to biblically minister to homeless people, poor people, people you'll meet along the way. Is that about right, Jen? Okay.
Yep.
So please feel free to ask questions, stop me, whatever. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. I need to make you guys, because I can't see all of you the way that this is. Jen, how do I do it? There we go. Did you change it the other way? Because I couldn't see everybody. Okay. So I wanted to talk about some verses. So if you want to take notes, that's fine. I have a number of verses that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, and I'm going to use it as a catalyst for the conversation. I'll let you guys all get some paper and pens or pencils. And you don't have to take notes. This is just a way that I thought I could make sure that I'm following what the Bible says on all these topics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some of them, but I'll give you the reference, and you don't feel like you have to look them all up right now, or just listen along with me, because there are a number of things. So I wanted to start out with, what does the Bible say about giving to the poor and the needy? In Isaiah 58:7, and this is all from the ESV Bible, it says, "Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see the naked to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh?" And the idea of hiding from your own flesh is that these are your brothers and sisters, and so you're one flesh, kind of. Proverbs 10:17 says, "Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed." Leviticus 35 and 36 says, "If your brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself with you, you shall support him as though he were a stranger and a sojourner, and he shall live with you. Take no interest from him or profit, but fear your God, that your brother may live beside you."
What was that reference again?
That is Leviticus 25, 35, and 36. Proverbs, and let me just tell you, there are so many of these. So I didn't choose all of them. I'm just trying to give you kind of a highlight of what it says. Proverbs 21:13 says, "Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered." Psalm 82:3 says, "Give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute." Proverbs 14:31 says, "Whoever oppresses a man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him." See if I want to share any more with you. James 2:16 says, "And one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, be warmed and filled,' without giving them the things needed for the body. What good is that?" Last one, Proverbs 28:27 says, "Whoever gives to the poor will not want, but he who hides his eyes will get many a curse." Pretty strong stuff, and it makes a great argument for giving to the poor and taking care of the needy. How many of you guys come across people who are asking for money or who need assistance, financial assistance? How many of you? Jen, I know you. Okay. Everybody pretty much. Okay. So the idea here is, obviously God is telling us we are to give to the poor and to take care of them and to take care of those who are not able to take care of themselves. So let me just check something. I'll make sure I'm on the right Wi-Fi. I am. Oh, sorry guys. So a couple examples. Well, tell me about your examples of giving to people.
A lot of times, people will ask for money. I've always been sort of like, oh, I read these verses, but then, oh, I see these people, and like my brother-in-law, he was a crack addict, and so I'm like, and he told me, don't give to any of those people because they're doing it for drugs, and I'm like, but then you see them and they ask, and so a lot of times what I do is carry like a granola bar or something. If they say, oh, I'm hungry, and if they're willing to take food. You know what I mean? Or I'll say, oh, if you need food, how about if I go take you and buy you food? You know what I mean? And then if they're willing to take the food, then I'm like, okay. But if they're not willing to take the food, then I'm like, forget it.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Well, every Saturday we go to a park downtown Austin, and there's a farmer's market there, and there's like a couple of bus stops there. But we encounter a ton of homeless people there. And so what we started doing was taking an ice chest that's full of Gatorade and water, and then we bring like snacks. We'll have like almonds, cashews, peanuts that we'll hand out. But yeah, they love that. And every once in a while, you know, when we were doing like the good person test, we would give, you know, we said, well, if you pass it, you'll get $5. We ended up giving them $5 anyway. But yeah, and then the word got around, and so they started telling all their friends that were homeless, hey, if you take the good person test, these guys will give you $5. So so we kind of had like, well, maybe not, so we're going to go broke here pretty quick, but you know, we still help them out as much as we can.
Okay. So I know that in our life we've done this obviously with our work. The church is obviously very generous with people. We often have people stop in. We have a gross hotel next door to us, our church, it's like rent by the hour, that kind of hotel. And we get people coming from there who will come over and say, I need money, or I need a bus pass or a bus ticket. And we just bought one for someone on Sunday. We want to minister to people in that way and show the love of Christ that way. But there are also people who take advantage of that. So I want to give you the other side of that. Okay. So there's a but to this. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 says, for even when we were with you, we would give you this command. If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. Genesis 3:19, in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread till thou return into the ground, for out of it waste take thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. That I wish was in a different form, because I don't know quite what that says. Proverbs 13:4, the soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat, which was a good thing back then. Not so much now. Proverbs 24 says, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing. It's saying that he won't beg or won't work because it's too cold, and he'll beg at the harvest because he has nothing to, he didn't work, so he doesn't have anything. Proverbs 21:25, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. So the flip side of this is, yes, there is a homeless population. There is a very poor population. And some of those are legitimate, that they truly are homeless and need assistance. But I wonder how many of them have just decided to use that lifestyle as a way to fund their own lifestyle, either because they can't get off drugs, or they don't want to work, or they, have some other reason. Now, again, I think there's legitimate things, but also I think there are people who are there to take advantage. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
have
agree.
definitely. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
I just said, yeah, I have definitely seen that, because when you're on the street, I see the same people out there day in, day out, and I've talked to them, and I'm like, how long have you been homeless? Why are you out here? Why don't you go to a shelter? Why don't you try and get help? And I've talked to some of them, and they're like, I want to be out here. They're like, I do not want to not be homeless. I'm like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Who else?
Go ahead, T-Mac.
Yeah, there was one lady that we met. She was sitting over by the tree with a bunch of benches and stuff, and and she says that she's there all the time, but yet, she was wearing like, brand new clothes, and it looked like, that she's been keeping up with herself regularly. So I don't know if, and then we come find out that, that she had a car, and so yeah, you wonder, when you look at these people, because a lot of the people that we deal with are, have a lot of mental issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the difficult situation to deal with, because when I worked in a mental health center, I just volunteered there, but that after that they closed them all down. So that would be a legitimate person who's homeless. Sometimes they have places they could live, but they don't want to live within, or can't live within, the confines of reality and normalcy. And so with being on the streets, they have a lot of freedom. So they're willing to risk the elements rather than live within the confines of social norms. Sorry, guys. Just trying to get rid of that. Um, we had a person who lived behind our church in his van for, I don't know, 5 months, something like that, 6 months. And when he first came to church, he had gone to the church next door, which is a different denomination, and told someone there about his situation, and they said, here's $5, goodbye. So didn't really take the time to hear him or minister to him. He came to our church, and of course it was a much different welcome. We are very friendly, loving church. So people welcomed him. They gave him coffee and, Danish or whatever. And he started coming to our church, but he asked if he could park his van behind our church while he was waiting to get some kind of document from the church or from the government. Sure, that's fine. We made meals for him. We let him come in the church and get coffee, or, all this. This went on for 5 months. We shared the gospel with him, and at times he seem to receive some of it. But ultimately, what we found out is this man was very, very deluded in his thinking. He had a very bad anger issue, and he was not willing to work, which he was capable of, and he was not willing to have a place to live because in his van he had 5 cats. So he was not willing in any way, shape, or form to part from his cats. So he was choosing to be homeless. And that's what I said to him. I said, the way that you're behaving means you are choosing to be homeless. You are choosing to be destitute. And so ultimately we stopped helping him. We didn't take him meals. We didn't, he at one point he wanted a key to the church. Oh, we had bought him a membership to the gym behind our building so that he could go in there, use the bathrooms. It's open 24 hours. He could take showers, whatever. Well, after the first month, we realized that he wasn't taking showers. And he wasn't, he was washing our hair in our church's kitchen sink. Now, I am beyond grossed out about that. That deserves like 15 tongues. Ugh. So ultimately, we stopped buying that for him because he wasn't using it. And, what do you do with a person like that? We didn't abandon him and say, well, you can't park here anymore. Ultimately, we knew there was going to be somebody in trucks there this summer because we had to redo our route. So he ended up going to, I believe, North Carolina, where at that point COVID started and the state paid for him to have a hotel room, paid him money every month. He got on disability, not that he needed to, but that's our government for you. And he was able to mooch for, and we still hear from him every once in a while because we get mail, but that's the kind of person that the Bible is talking about, who's a sluggard, who should not eat because they do not work. And so here's my next set of verses is, how do you find the balance? How do you determine who to help and who not to help? So what I did is I through my work over the years is trying to find out how to deal with that. But I have one more set of verses before I give you my suggestions.
Exactly. See, I agree.
Did somebody say something? Okay. Do you guys have any questions so far? Comments? I feel like I'm just like blah, blah, blah. All right. One of the things that it's important to do when you're helping the needy and determining how to help is to be able to set boundaries. And boundaries are often difficult for people to set, especially as in our culture, and even the churches with the social justice and all the racial tensions, we want to try to be sensitive to all that. And sometimes that leads to unwise decisions because we're trying to follow the world's culture instead of a biblical culture. And one of the things that we have to figure out is how to love our neighbors and what that looks like. So in Mark 12:31, He's talking about the greatest commands. He says, the second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other command greater than these. So love the Lord your God, and then love your neighbor as yourself. So Matthew 7:12, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Matthew 22:36 through 40. I'm not going to, that's the same thing I just read. So ignore that one. Romans 15:2, let each of us please his neighbor for his good to build him up. So it's talking about building up your neighbor as a way of showing love. Matthew 7:1 through 2, judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use it will be measured to you. So again, carefully finding that balance between loving your neighbor and being wise with what you're doing. Ephesians 4:25 says, therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. So what does that mean to speak truth to your neighbor and putting falsehoods away? Sometimes it means saying the hard things. Romans 5:8, but God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. I think it's easy to become judgmental and hardened a little bit when you're working with a culture of homeless people, and we tend to come up with things that we're thinking about them on a regular basis. Oh, they're just using me, or they are. What would you think of those kind of people? What things would you think when you're working with that culture? This is a question for you guys.
Yeah, I have in my personal thing, I've sort of feel like, yeah, exactly like you said, am I being used, or am I, because when they have mental issues, or sometimes they have drug issues you don't realize. I've talked to a lot of the homeless people that tell me outright, yeah, I lie to people so that they'll, give me the things that I need. And so you're like, and then if you talk to that same person over and over again, they tell you one thing and then later they tell you something else. And like this one guy, I see him and he's like, oh, if I'll borrow money and then I'll give it back to you. I'm like, you've taken money from me like 5 times. I was like,
Yep.
you've never come back over here. And he's like, oh. I'm like, I remember you.
Exactly.
You think you're just like, what do I do with that? Yeah, I don't want to be mean because those people see me over and over and over again. But then you have to sort of be like here it is, like here's the deal.
There's a boundary, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Is if I can find it. One more verse. 1 Corinthians 16:14 says, let all that you do be done in love. And that's a good reminder that we start everything with people in love, because again, like I said, you see these people over and over again. It's easy to become angry with them or resentful of them, and we need to remember to do everything with love. So the other is, okay, so what does this all mean? Our attitude should be different from the world. Our behavior should be different from the world. So I'm going to give you some things that I have come up with over time. So clearly there are commands to take care of the needy. But the difficulty is determining who the needy are. And what should we actually do for the needy? Any thoughts or questions about that?
I think when you first, you come in contact with a homeless person, it's like when we're sharing the gospel, we don't know who the sheep or the goats are. We're just throwing seed, So when you first meet a homeless person, I mean, we don't know their background, where they come from, if they're taking advantage. So, you just have to, just pour your heart out towards them. And I don't know, and just, that's the attitude I think that you need to have, because we don't know. I mean, so
Okay.
unless you see them every day for, months and months and months.
Right. So we have 3 commands. We have the command to, or the admonition to care for the poor and the needy. We also need to not give to those who are not, let's just say, worthy of it, because they're taking advantage of the system in some form. And then maintaining the loving attitude and deciding what is most loving for that person. Because sometimes what's most loving is saying no. All right, so I'm going to give you a few things. I think there's maybe, I don't know, 10, 8, 10, yeah, of what I have done in my life to figure this out for me. So if you glean anything from this, that's a bonus. In my experience, and it does take time, I try to flesh out if there is a real need, how much of an effort the person has put forth in trying to resolve their own situation, and what is the most loving thing to do. And keeping these thoughts in my mind helps me to try to make wise decisions in helping people. One of the first things, I'm actually a counselor. So one of the first things that I learned as a counselor is that if I'm working harder than the client to resolve their issues, then it's not a healthy relationship. They need to be putting the effort in. Are they going to a housing place? Are they, applying for things, whatever? Second,
What was the third thing up above? You said, so is there really a need? How much did they do to resolve the issue? And what was the third thing you said there?
what's the most loving thing to do in that situation? I know Christians get confused on setting boundaries because they think that we should always say yes, and that is not true. And it's difficult to say no, and it's difficult because then people will say, well, that wasn't very Christ-like for you to do that. But in reality, saying no is oftentimes the loving thing, because it keeps them from continuing on in their behavior, or you helping them continue in their behavior, or keeping them from drowning in their sin. We just talked tonight in Bible study that the man in First Corinthians who was in the church, and he was intimate with his father's wife, and how the most loving thing that the church did was to put him out so that he would find repentance. And that is not something that we practice within the churches often. And I know it's not what we practice in our hearts very often with people. So I want to encourage you, and this is down below in my next steps, but encourage you to realize that that is not unloving or unchristlike to say no. So doing all this is not exact, and it's often difficult to say no especially if you're one who has a very tender heart and want to solve everyone's problems. Are any of you like that? Are you smiling because you are one?
Who, me?
And the guy in the middle. I don't have names up anymore. Yep.
Francisco.
Nothing wrong with that. That is a wonderful quality to have. But it's when you're when you're struggling with what to do and feel there's something not quite right with the person or situation, if you know that you're that kind of person, then talk to someone else. Say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I keep going back and back and back. What should I do? Or should I do something different? If something feels off to you, or you're working harder than the people you're trying to help, then that's a time to say, I wonder if I should set a boundary with this person. And again, it goes against what your heart's telling you. It goes against what you think the Bible says, but the Bible does not say that we can't set boundaries. Does that make sense to you? Is that something you struggle with? Yeah.
We have to be careful because the guys would just come up and help themselves to the water and the Gatorade, and we want to be able to hand it out. And last Saturday, we have a homeless guy. We call him Brother Bishop. He's there every Saturday, and he thinks what we do. He calls it, "This our church. This is my church." And anyone that shows any kind of confrontation towards us, he gets mad at them, and we have to tell him, "Hey, calm down, calm down." So on the Saturday, I don't know if it was last Saturday or the Saturday before, we just said, "Hey, we were leaving." I said, "Brother Bishop, do you want to pray us out?" So he prayed. As he's praying, and he had a wonderful prayer. And I looked down, and he has a big duffel bag, right? I looked down, and I had brought 2 boxes of the juice bags in with water. His duffel bag was full of juice bags. And I went to the ice chest. He had taken every one when we weren't looking, and they were all in his duffel bag.
So what did you do?
We talked to him. I let him. I was like, you could take them, because he had already had them in his duffel bag, and I wasn't going to put them back in my ice chest. I don't know, just because sanitation purposes. But yeah, we talked to him, said, you have to ask before you take this, So I think, but he's the guy that he'll put his finger up to his ear and say, "Hold on, my lawyer's calling," and put his finger up to his ear and have a full-on conversation with his lawyer, who's not there, with no phone, just his finger. Yeah, he has definitely some mental issues.
Okay. So who would want to give T-Mac, is that your name?
T-Mac, yeah, Tom.
I only saw a brief thing here of who your names are. Who would want to give some suggestion to T-Mac? If you were thinking, okay, what could have been done differently?
Maybe say to him, all right, we do care about you. We do want to give you some of these, but these weren't all for you. And so when you take things without asking, then that would be stealing, and you don't want to be a thief. And we want to maintain a good relationship. So now we need to make sure that you decide that you're going to ask before you take more than one, or something along those lines.
Okay, great advice. It's hard to think in the moment. So that's one of my things that I'm going to talk about. Knowing yourself, this is number 3, knowing yourself is important in these difficult cases. If you tend to be, oh wait, did I read that? No, wait.
You didn't read that before.
I didn't. This is something different. If you tend to be more of a bleeding heart, recognize that and seek help to find a balanced response in situations. If you lean towards more of a cold heart, then check your thoughts and actions with someone who is more gentle. Both extremes are harmful to ministering to the needy. So there has to be the love, but there also has to be the tough balance, the boundaries. Number 4, set the parameters on exactly what you will do or say when approached with specific scenarios. So, for example, if someone approaches on the street to ask you for change or a dollar, decide before you even go out if this is something that you want to do. Determine if you're giving this would give you the opportunity to share the gospel with them. Now, um, the point of setting parameters for yourself, and that's what we're doing, is we're figuring out what boundaries and parameters to set with people. If you go out knowing I'm not going to give anyone money, then that's what your decision is. If you go out and you say, this is what John Piper does. When he goes jogging, he takes New Testaments with him, and inside of them are $5 bills. And so when he goes, he will hand these out to people who ask or that he sees, sitting. So for him, he's already determined what he's going to do. It's a way for him to share the gospel as well. And his response is, it's not for me to determine what they're going to do with this money. It's me determining what I'm going to do with my actions. So you don't have to be the police with the money that you're giving them. It's giving you the freedom to do that, knowing I did this in love and I'm going to let God take care of the rest of it. Now, if you can do that with a conversation about the gospel, would you let me buy you a coffee? And walking with them, you're sharing your testimony. Or, whatever, I'm going to give you this Bible, but can you I want to ask you a couple questions first. You do the good person test or something like that. So there are ways that you can work the gospel in to sharing that, and still have boundaries. So T-Mac, in your case, what I probably would have said is, not only what Jen said, and I would have gone farther, is that you have to give them the back. You can take one, but this is stealing. You have taken from us, and this is for everyone, not just you. And by doing this, you have made yourself more important than other people, and that's not kind. Now, I know it's hard to say those things, especially when you want to maintain a good relationship with someone, but you're not helping him by letting him take them, if that makes sense. And when you're getting those feelings inside your heart, like, ooh, I don't like this, it's because the boundaries have been broken. And we all know people who in life don't work in their boundaries. I try to ignore or stay away from people who don't stay in the lanes that I've set up for them. Some of them it's because they don't recognize it, and some I just not worth staying in that relationship with them. Comments or questions? So now, Tom, right? This is going to happen, or it could happen. And so one of the things you can say before anything is given out is, you may not take anything out of this cooler without asking me. This stuff is mine. I'm going to give it to you freely, but you must ask me. So you set up the expectation for people ahead of time, and so when they cross that, then that's a way that you can say, I said that you couldn't take these without me asking me. Does that make sense? So setting up.
It makes sense. We do that. We try to have someone watching the ice chest, but this particular individual, I'm not sure how much he understands, because he's always trying to take stuff out of the ice chest. He just thinks he can just go help himself, but I don't know how much he can comprehend, as far as, because we've told him numerous times, you need to ask. We'll get it for you.
Right.
So it was.
Have you told him no? So when he's,
Yeah, we told him that's like, we've already given you some. We're not giving you any more. Yeah, we have done that.
and he still takes it.
Well, if we turn our back or something, that's when he took all those juice bags and
Yeah.
put them in his bag. But most time we have someone that's watching the ice chest. But
So he had asked me if he could have a drink, one of those little juice things. And so I went in there and I gave it to him. He's like, "Can I have another one?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll give you a second one." And then we closed it back up, and then we got busy doing whatever. And then he took all of them. And then when Tom confronted him, he said, "Francisco told me I could grab some." I'm like, "I didn't tell you that."
I mean, it was like, a split. I had to make a decision as far as it was like, if I take them and then I throw them back in the ice chest and it's going to contaminate. I don't know if he has COVID or not, so I just made a decision. You could take them, but you know what? You hand them out to your friends. You could take them, because we bought them to hand out anyway, but I didn't give them all to one person.
Tom made it clear. He's like, "When have you come to us and we haven't given you anything? Like,
Right.
If you just ask us, we'll give it to you, but you can't just go and take it on your own."
Right. Yeah, those situations are very difficult, and you're always going to have someone pushing the boundaries. Always. I mean,
I'm not sure how much he understands because of
his
mental condition.
Yeah. And that's true too. It's quite possible. Or, no, I'm not saying he is, or he could be acting like that so that you don't push the boundaries.
He's the world's best actor then.
He probably is. He probably is. I mean, it's harder to fake that, but.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's faking it.
Yeah. So I guess, you have to decide in your hearts, this is what we're talking about, how you're going to handle this gentleman and how far you want to take this. Number 4, set parameters on exactly what you will do or say when approached with specific scenarios. I feel like I said that up. Did I already say that?
Yeah, that's fine. We need to hear it again.
Number 4. Okay. Number 5. Brainstorm with one another about different scenarios. So things that you guys have all been through, things that you and what parameters you can set. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing, but by bouncing ideas off of one another, you might find you are being a little controlling or a little too carefree with your boundaries, and that the insight of others can be helpful. So you guys are a great group. You've been doing this for a long time. You have been involved with different scenarios. So, it's easy to say, well, this happened to me. What should I do? This happened to me. What should I do? It's amazing to me what crazy stuff goes on in the world. Madison had she was leaving a restaurant, and the 2 men and woman that came in, one man, I'm sorry to say this, but one man put his hands down the other man's pants and pulled out his personal things right in front of my daughter. And now how do you can't prepare yourself to respond to things like that. There's no words. So there are going to be things that you guys have happened that you cannot prepare for because it's so out of the norm. Number 6, don't feel guilty for your decisions. And this is where I think Christians really struggle because, again, we have the idea that we should always say yes and that we should not have boundaries, that's mean, that's unloving, and yet often what we do is unloving because we aren't setting those things. So sometimes saying no is the most loving thing. If you know your money you give will be wasted on drugs, then you know that the most loving thing is to say no. Tell the person why you're saying no to helping them with money. It's okay to have boundaries even as a Christian. You just have to remember your goal is to be the most loving you can be. So what would be an example that you've come across where the most loving thing would be tough for you to do?
Yeah, I took a young man home the other night. I left my phone downtown after we witnessed. So I went back to pick up my phone, and I picked up a feller, and he didn't seem too drugged up until he got in my car, and then I realized, uh-oh, I done made a mistake. So yeah, I'll have to be extra cautious next time around. Probably won't happen again, but yeah.
Okay, that's a great example. So you're trying to be loving, but you probably could have put yourself in danger by doing that. So that's a good example. Anybody else? Okay.
Francisco had a guy. Talk about the
Yeah.
guy that wouldn't get out of your car, Francisco.
Oh, you guys laughing at? This is terrible. No, yeah, some guy we met and we witnessed to him. I gave him my phone number. I gave him the card, the CCN card, and the first night he called me 35 times
Oh
from
my God.
like 10 at night till 4 in the morning. I finally picked up, and he had been taken to the hospital, and he needed somebody to talk to. So at like 5 in the morning, I went over there to talk to him, see what was going on, and yeah, he's schizophrenic, I guess. And so that was the first night, and then like the following night, he called me another 47 times overnight.
Oh my gosh.
And he asked me, he got taken to the hospital again. He asked me to come back down. I went back down, and he asked me to take him to the and I was with this time I was with my daughters because we were about to go witnessing downtown, and you know my daughters
Daughter.
11 and 10 years old. And he asked me to take him to like a outpatient mental health facility that he goes to get medicine. And then I took him there, and they wouldn't take him in, like the outpatient. Like, you've been here so many times. You know, we tried everything we can to help you. You don't want to help yourself. And then I was trying to leave. I was like, all right, you guys got him, right? And he ran and jumped into my car and wouldn't get out of my car. And he's like, oh, can you just take me to this other place? And so I started driving, and then he started freaking out, like having a breakdown. He's like, no, they're chasing me. I can't go there. I need to go somewhere else. Inside my car, my two daughters are in there. And then so
Your
I
poor
just
girls. Your poor girls.
Yeah, and then I ended up taking him I just drove to the emergency room, and I went in there. He wouldn't get out of my car. And so like the security guard in the emergency room had to come out with a doctor to get him out of my car. I called the guys somebody to come pick up my daughters and take them. That way they weren't in the car during this whole thing. But it was crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, helping people is the right thing to do. And you never know, though, that you're going to get, have difficulty. And it's hard to say no when you've put yourself out there and the person is, wanting to receive help, but you realize you're in way over your head and can't help. So
yeah, and I still feel bad to this day for like blocking his number, and yeah.
But even though I wouldn't qualify that as he's someone that is not helping himself, and so although the nurses, if they said you've been here and you're not doing what you need to do, you can't help him. There's nothing you can do to help him. And so that's where you would say, do not feel guilty about what you did. You can pray for him that that the Lord will speak to him and change his heart, but you physically can't do anything. And helping, reminding yourself of that is, it's okay to not be that person's helper. It really is. Here's something is, and I think, Jen, you mentioned something like this, but offer alternatives if you have to say no. Say, if they want money, then say, I'm happy to take you to McDonald's or wherever to get something to eat, or offering them a granola bar that you have, or, something like that. Cost is always an issue. So I don't know where you gentlemen get your funding from. But these are things like a church would come alongside you and give you extra spending money to help in these situations. Or walking for a cup of coffee, invite them to your church, except not the man who wouldn't get out of your car. Ask if they want a job, help them find a job if that's their goal. I don't know if you all know the resources that are available to people in the communities that could help them, but referring them to somewhere is something that you could do. I didn't grow up here, so I didn't work here in any of these fields. So in Dayton, I knew all the agencies that could help someone, but I don't know any here. But I'm sure you guys.
In Pittsburgh, there's an app. It's called Big Berg, and you put in if you're a male or a female and your age, and then it has like a circle thing, and you click the different things that you need, and it'll give you a listing of all the places you can go and when they're open. And so they may,
Awesome.
yeah, it's called Big Berg. And so you guys you should look in your area. You could and see what they have, because they probably have apps like that. Because if Pittsburgh has an app, I'm sure a cooler city like Austin or New York City has big listings of where all the homeless shelters are and when the food is and the times and stuff. Actually, for Bethany, I have the list because we always have that for Repent and Witness, but I'm sure Austin has the same thing. Tim, I don't know about Portsmouth. I don't know, but because you live in a smaller town, but yeah.
Let's see. Don't, in terms of finding a place in the community, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Reach out to your churches to see how they can help in ministering to the needy. Ask people and in your churches to donate money to your ministry so that you can have extra funds to buy lunch or a cup of coffee or the $5 that you give out in a New Testament, anything like that. Because I think there would be people who would be willing to give donations like that, even if they don't directly sponsor you, that they would be willing to give donations for such things like that.
Yeah, I didn't tell you guys this, but I'm right now ministering to this little lady who was homeless, and now she has an apartment. And so I asked how Missy ended up here is that I asked people in the women's Bible study to help me out. And so several people gave clothing for her. Some people gave some dishes and some pots and pans for her to have in her apartment. And people gave sheets and blankets and a bunch of other things. So even though a lot of those people don't actually donate to me, but they were willing to donate to help this very specific situation. And so being verbal with others, hey, this is what's going on, people were willing to step up and really helped out a lot. So
Yeah, people are, looking for these kinds of things. They want to help. They want to be a part of ministry. Francisco, do you have something you want to say?
No, when we started going downtown and we got involved with the homeless, we got involved in a homeless ministry unintentionally, right? We found out there was a church under the bridge that they did, and I went and visited them, and they gave me a bunch of resources. Well, they told me like where we can refer people to when we do run into those issues.
Okay, that's good. All right. Number 8, know when it is on.
What did you say?
I said know when it is a con. So cons are very tricky and require you to be diligent so that you don't get caught up in it. And it can be anything. It can be a damsel in distress, back rent they owe, someone is after them for money, any number of scenarios that would, you can get caught up in where they're going to try to take money from you. So when you find yourself in a situation where you're getting worried or anxious or just a general feeling like something's off here, that's when you need to stop. You need to go to someone else and say, hey, this is happening. I'm not sure about it. Can you help me process this? And praying about it, not getting worked up. And there should be peace when you're helping people, not chaos, not drama, not getting caught up in their drama, and not that any icky feelings like anger or frustration or resentment. So when you're feeling those things, something's off. And that's where you need to rein in and get control of whatever it happens to be. Does that make sense to you guys? Thoughts or comments on that?
No, it's just good to hear that, oh, when you're having those thoughts, you're not crazy, like listen to them. So that's a good, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Number 9, give yourself grace. Maybe you've decided that you'll be generous as you can without care. That's okay too. If you'd rather it be taken advantage of, then that's okay. Honestly, I mean, if that's your thought is whatever's going to happen, I don't care. I'm going to just keep doing and giving and whatever. That's okay. If you have been duped, forgive yourself. Don't hold on to that like, oh, I was so stupid. I should have done this or shouldn't have done this. And because God is still on his throne. And we aren't in control of anything else that's going on here on earth. And we're not in control of anyone's hearts or attitudes. It's all God. And so it's important that you continue to remember that even when you are serving God, that you remember he's ultimately in charge, not you. And the last thing is, the bottom line is not to have expectations of the recipient, only yourself. You are the one who will be held on account of your actions. You have to feel led by God in what you're doing in all things. So I know it is difficult when you're in the moment and things are happening and people are saying things and you may have multiple people around you to know quite what to say to someone when they bring up something or ask you something or whatever. So that's why I think it's really important to know yourself, 2, set your parameters, 3, go through scenarios with other people and come up with a game plan before you go out. That way you're kind of prepared for what you might get.
One of
So,
the things that happened to me was I was at the downtown and I had this one guy come up to me and like yell and scream at me demanding money, and he scared the heck out of me. So I was like, so now I put like, I have like like a couple quarters in one pocket, a couple quarters in another pocket, and then, you know what I mean, away from where the rest of my other money is. Just anybody's like, rah, I'd be like, oh, let me see, and like then I'd be like, oh, look here, and then like just have like this little bit of money without having to pull out some other, you know what I mean, show them where my real wallet is, so that
right.
it's always somewhere else, because he scared the heck out of me. I gave that dude $10, and I was like, did I just get robbed? I'm like, but I should have given it to him.
Yes,
And I'm like,
yes, you did.
So
That's you give yourself grace. You learn, and now you have a different plan.
yeah.
Anybody else have?
Yeah, yeah. And when I was in high school, I had to carry my lunch money in my socks. So they'd always banging on my pockets wanting my money. So if I stuck it in my pocket, it was gone. So I always had to carry it in my sock, and I'd pull off my old stinky shoe, and out would come the change, and I'd give it to the cafeteria.
Poor lunch lady. I worked at a pool and took the kids' money when they came into the pool, and they would bring it and be wet. I'm like, I am not taking this. Go in there, dry it on the dryer, and I'll take it back. Or they pull it out of their sweaty socks. I'm like, go in, wash your change, and bring it back. I am not touching it. So, what other things that I talked about tonight did you think about or questions about?
No, it was excellent. Very good.
Good.
Yeah, I was thinking about the resources, you know. I mean, if we don't ask, we're never going to know, right? You know, so, you know, that would be a big help.
Right. And even having cards from those places or a cheat sheet for yourself that you can refer to, and little pieces of paper that you can write and give people a phone number or, you know, whatever that's something that really good that you could do for people. Knowing when food is, you know, where they can get food on certain days, or food banks, whatever. Jen, do they have those downtown in Pittsburgh?
Food banks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a bunch of different places. They have places where people can go to do their laundry for free. They have places where people can go eat and see. There's a listing of like, what day is it? So what church do you go to for the meal that day, kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything more unless you guys have any questions or comments.
No, we're
No,
good.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Thank you so much. See, I knew you were going to have some awesome stuff to say, so I'm so
You
grateful.
told me, when she told me nothing, can you come and speak and try to help us out? And then I texted and she's like, when did I text you? 2 days ago?
Yeah.
Sunday. I said, what do you want me to talk about? I don't know. Could you give me some parameters? Don't have anything. Sorry.
That's the friendship parameter.
And so she told me yesterday, how about if you talk about this? I'm like, I can talk about that for sure. So.
Well, you did a great job, Missy. Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
blessings to all of you. I just pray your ministries are still just so much of a blessing to people, and that people are reached for Christ.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
Take care, guys.
Amen.
Thank you.
Good night.